This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, here we are. It is May, what is this, May the 10th? May the 10th. Okay, getting my days mixed up. May the 10th, that's what happens when you work nights. Folks, we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of a film that I've loved since my childhood. And I've got the Blu-ray right here, and I'm very proud of this film, Clash of the Titans. I love Ray Harryhausen. I got an autograph of his somewhere here. I should have dug that out before the show here, and I never even thought of it. I dug all these other stuff out, but I do have a Ray Harryhausen autograph, and a huge fan of his work. And Clash of the Titans and The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, two of my favorites. Happy to celebrate the 40th anniversary of this film, and I am joined for the third time by John Walsh, who worked with Ray Harryhausen. How do you do, John?
I'm great, Greg. How are you? Third time. Is it third time lucky? I
It
think
is
we
the
were lucky
third
each time,
time.
weren't we? So third
Yep.
time's the charm. That's what they said on Back to the Future. The third time's the charm. Never understood that, but I'm sure it's a good thing.
Love Back to the Future. Yep. Yeah, I got the Blu-ray here. Are you guys doing anything special for this film for its 40th?
Yes, and yes and no, because the lockdown has stopped us from doing lots of things we want to do. We have got the exhibition that's happening in Scotland and so on. But for the film itself, we are in talks with Warner Brothers to do a 4K version of Clash of the Titans.
Nice.
And that's been on the cards now for a while. So we have a film company we're working with, along with Warner Brothers. And so we have all the original elements. We have found new stuff in the Foundation's archive, test footage, animation stuff. We released a couple of brief clips of that a year or so ago to coincide with my book, Harryhausen, The Lost Movies. So yeah, there's lots happening. We have a commentary I recorded with Ray back in the day, and that's never been released. And so we're hoping that that can be released soon as well, and that could be released as part of it. So I used to sit down with Ray Harryhausen. Here we are with John Landis.
John Landis, yep.
And we would record commentaries in his house, and he hadn't done one for Clash of the Titans or most of the films. And so we started with Clash and worked backwards. And I remember Ray saying to me, I don't think I'll remember much because it was such a long time ago. And of course, he remembered lots. So it was great. So we're hoping to include that as part of a new release for Clash of the Titans. It might not be this 40th anniversary year. It might be that we scooch into next year, into 2022. But I don't think anyone will mind, because hopefully it'll be worth the wait. Because the Blu-ray you've got, it's good. It could be better. It's a good picture. It's the best picture and sound it's had so far. But we think we can get it up a step or two.
Well, you know what? I'm looking forward to that. I love this film. This is a film, like I said, I remember on our first interview, I said that I remember when this film was released, they had like the stickers and the cereal boxes. I remember that so well. Actually, you just hold for a second. I am going to grab something to show you. You just hold there.
Sure.
There we are. There we go. I did see something I was able to grab quickly. Look what I got.
Oh my goodness.
It's a Medusa.
That is a crazy Medusa. That's
yeah,
like a nightclub Medusa.
She did have a bow and with her, but I don't know where that went. Probably somewhere, because I'm just temporarily in this location. I'll try to light this better, Look at that. The snakes in the hair. Yeah, I found this at a flea market, actually, and I was like, I got to grab that. It's Medusa. Medusa was my favorite creature in Clash of the Titans, and that sequence, I love the whole movie, but I got to say the Medusa sequence still remains my favorite.
I think it was one of Ray's favorite sequences as well. So people would often ask him favorite scenes, favorite films, and so on. And he was really proud of that, because it's a scene where the music, the lighting, the animation, and the acting, the performance, it all comes together really nicely. And it was it's considered to be one of his great scenes. You know, we've done a recent poll, Greg, of the top 100 Harryhausen moments for the centenary, and Medusa came, I think it was number 2 or number 3 in the poll, so right up there at the very top. And an incredibly spooky scenario. But I think I might have mentioned this last time, or forgive me if I didn't, but Medusa was based on a very famous Hollywood film star. So her face was
Joan
based on a very
Crawford.
famous Hollywood beauty. Do you remember who it was?
Joan Crawford.
Joan Crawford, that's right.
Yeah.
So Joan Crawford, obviously a very beautiful lady, but she had quite the stare. So when she stared at people, they probably felt they were turning to stone. But and you can see it just above me here, that sort of the red lips of Medusa in one of the posters that was created for the film.
I love how Pegasus's wings are going across there, and you got Perseus and Andromeda right there in the middle. I love that. Who did that?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. I should have all this information to hand, but famously, the who was it? The brothers that did the Star Wars poster did one of the Clash of the Titans posters. They didn't do this one. The Hildenbrandt brothers did the one of the Clash of the Titans posters. But as I say, not that particular one. But this is a favourite of mine. This is the one that was the European release. So this one where Perseus's sword kind of slashes down through the
yes, I see that
through marble. So I kind of move out of the way slightly. But they had lots of money on this film for marketing compared to other Harryhausen films. So they really were able to get the best people involved, whether it's for posters, for music, and so on. And so I think that the film deserves a real sort of 40th anniversary revisit on 4K. I'm not sure if are you a convert to 4K yourself, Greg?
Oh yeah. Yep, I'll get it. If it's out, I will get it. I will get it. And I got this too. I saw this one day and at the bookstore, and it was on the magazine rack. Lots of Harryhausen articles in here, but you got Clash of the Titans, a big article on that there, and of course you got the skeletons from Jason and the Argonauts back there, and Andromeda there in the background chained up. I've tried to see if I could locate Judy Bowker here for the show, but haven't had any luck. But I always liked her as Andromeda because she wasn't your typical damsel. She actually she had a very strong vibe to her.
Yes, it wasn't that popular at the time to create strong female characters, and yet in Ray Harryhausen films, you regularly find, if not strong female characters, creatures who are female, whether it's Medusa here or Kali in Golden Voyage of Sinbad, or the figurehead in Golden Voyage of Sinbad, who's a woman who comes to life, as a siren who comes to life. And sometimes the female characters are that much more scary because they bring a lot of presence as well. And there's a lot of femininity, isn't there? Even with Medusa, the way she's half snake and half woman, there's still a lot of femininity about her.
Yeah. I still hate the remake, but I love the original film a lot. And I do know that Harryhausen, there was talks of him after Clash of the Titans to do another Sinbad movie that would come out in '85. But I'm under the impression he kind of felt that your Rick Bakers, your Rob Boutines, and Spielbergs and Lucases were coming up, and was that the case where he felt that stop motion was going out?
I don't think so precisely. When we look back now, we realize Clash of the Titans was his last film. It was also his most successful film by every measure, financially, in terms of the amount of people who've seen it, the amount of showings on television. He did plan to make a follow-up called Force of the Trojans, which would have been with different characters, but set within Greek mythology. And there was plans, as you say, for other Sinbad films, Sinbad on Mars and so on. In my book, Harryhausen, The Lost Movies, I kind of cover all of the films that didn't get made and what happened after Clash of the Titans. And there was a move forward with technology, but stop motion animation was still being used by Phil Tippett for the Empire Strikes Back, of course, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in the little car race, where they go up and down that sort of roller coaster in the mine. those little creatures in the mine cars, they're stop motion animation. RoboCop, Dragon Slayer, these are all films that Phil Tippett did. Willow, Howard the Duck, these lots of great stop mo sequences in those, right up until Jurassic Park. The original Jurassic Park creatures were going to be stop motion animation by Phil Tippett, and he'd created something called a go motion technique, which allowed for more smooth movement. But essentially, it was the same technique, Greg. So I think Ray Harryhausen felt there was still some mileage in what he was doing, but unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And for people who haven't got this book, go and buy it. It's
Yes,
still
I
available.
want to talk about that. Yes. Tell us about this book. How long did it take you to write that?
Well, Ray had been making films or film ideas since he was in his teens. So really, this book is nearly 100 years in the making, because it's all of the ideas that Ray Harryhausen had for all those years. And I said to him, look, we should put together a book or do something about this unmade material, because there's so much of it. And he was not that keen, because he didn't want people to see what he saw was his failures. And he said that, if people found out there was this many projects I didn't get made, then that might reduce their admiration of me or their respect and so on. Of course, we don't see it like that when we flick through the book. But you can imagine, Greg, if you or I had a book of our failures put together and put in bookshops, and people could flick through it and see what you'd got wrong and what I got wrong, you can see from his point of view why that might have been. But I checked with Vanessa, his daughter. I'm a trustee of this foundation along with Vanessa, his daughter. And we decided, no, now's the right time to tell people what they could have seen in films, and what films could have been made, and what sequences were deleted. So up here, for example, this was a sequence from Jason and the Argonauts that wasn't made. So we do include scenes that were cut from the films that were completed, as well as complete films which were never made, such as Baron Munchausen. And Ray had a version of King Kong he wanted to do. He was involved with so many other films, other Sinbads, other Greek mythologies. Ray wanted to bring Conan the Barbarian to the screen, and this would have been in the late 1960s. So he was well ahead of the curve, as it were, in terms of what audiences would want to see. And of course, the film was made successfully in 1982 by Dino De Laurentiis and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I love that one too.
It's a great film. There's some great sequences in that, and I think it's aged really well. So it's just interesting. 20 or 30 years ago, there might not have been a market for this type of book, Greg, but now there is. I mean, other recent books I've done, I wrote Flash Gordon, the official story of the film. And I mean, that was a film that was considered to be not successful when it came out. And yet now it's had a 4K remaster.
Ted kind of brought it back to life.
Yeah. So it kind of got younger audiences to see, hey, what's this strange film from 40 years ago? But, it's got great music. It's got great design. This book sold out the week it was released in America last year. And so, again, it's not, when the film came out in 1980, the idea of doing a big coffee table art book to show how it was all made, people would have been like, well, who's buying that? And now, of course, it's selling like hotcakes. And just straight off the presses is this my latest one, which is
Escape from New York.
Everyone loves that movie.
Actually,
and it's just one of those great films, a great Friday night movie.
I got that here too.
Got that too. Look at that. Yep. And that's a film that's been restored. It's a beloved film. The older these films get, the more people like them. And this book's out on the 28th of September. So you can buy your copy there.
I've had Adrian Barbeau on my show 6 years ago talking about this film.
Wow. Yeah. Well, she spoke to me about this for the book and lots of the others. But I just think that people are more accepting now to look back at old films and say, look, these need a greater appreciation, because when you and I were younger and went to the cinema, we had no control over what newspapers would say or what studios would think and do. But now people our age are running things. They're running newspapers and magazines and websites, and are involved at the studios for restoration. So they're saying, hang on, let's get this film and these others and reappraise them. What new details can we find out about them? So 40th anniversary for Clash of the Titans is a perfect time to talk about it. In 2010, I think it was it around then that the remake of Clash of the Titans came out? So, and that would have been roughly the 30th-ish anniversary. The great thing about Clash of the Titans from 2010, the remake, it got people speaking about the original. So people went to see it and were like, oh, okay, I kind of liked it. It had new people, but I now want to go back and look at the original. So that's a positive thing that came out of that remake. So I think it's always good to not be scared of remakes. John Carpenter said that he doesn't mind his films being remade because people will always go back to the original Halloween and the original The Fog. So there is talk of Escape from New York being remade, and great, because when it is and it comes out, people will say, I like that, but now I want to go and see the original. And I think one thing helps the other.
There are a few remakes I really did like. 1978, Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I loved.
I love that.
Really loved. David Cronenberg did a wonderful update on The Fly.
Yes.
And comedically speaking, I liked Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor better than Jerry Lewis's.
Yeah.
And even the American version, The Birdcage, the remake of the French movie, was done beautifully. I mean, there are a few remakes out there. Yeah. It's just when you get into remaking Psycho is when I start, yeah.
It's tricky. I think the intention is to pay homage to these films. But, one of the main reasons studios do this, Greg, is that you spend half of your advertising money to create what's called brand awareness. So if you're making a new film with new characters, it's very difficult to explain to an audience in a short advert or a clip or a trailer what it's all about. Whereas if it's a remake of a popular television series or a remake of a movie, people know. If it's a live action version of The Lion King, well, if you like the animated Lion King, you're already there. You kind of think, oh, I know what I'm getting. So it's tempting for studios to take a shortcut because, of course, they're taking all the risks as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love Clash of the Titans and looking forward to that 4K version. They go do a steelbook of it as well?
Well, what we're planning to do, and this has never been done before, we're planning to get all of Ray Harryhausen's films into one kind of treasure box, because the films are owned by different studios. We've spoken to all of the studios involved. They've all said, theoretically, yes, you can do it. So now we just have to get them together, and there'll be individual releases, I'm sure, but there's going to be one ultimate release of all of Ray's films with all of the extra content we can possibly get, all of my commentary recordings, the short film I did with Ray back in the late 80s. Everything's going to be there. I mean, it's where is that now? Let me show you. That was me. Whoa, look at that. That was me back in the day.
Is that the Kraken?
That's the Kraken. Yeah, I can go bigger. Look, so
look at
the original
that.
Kraken from Clash of the Titans. And that's a documentary I made with Ray in his house when I was an 18-year-old film student and looking very serious.
Wow.
So, that was quite something, to actually get to work with one of the creatures from the film. And he was minty fresh back then. The Kraken has been restored since those days, but he was minty fresh at that time. So my short film will be included, hopefully, in any bundle with all of the extras. And we're hoping it's kind of the ultimate box set. And on the one hand, in some markets, physical releases of DVDs and Blu-rays have gone down. So in your regular places, yeah, like in your supermarkets and those sort of general retail places, you don't really see them as much. But what's gone up are bespoke box sets. So, box sets that are as thick as a house brick that only have one film in there, but in different versions with the soundtrack and maybe with a booklet. It's happened to Dawn of the Dead. It's had a lovely 4K remaster from my friends down at Final Frame, who I know quite well. The Lady Killers, Total Recall, they've been 4K by Studio Canal. Flash Gordon, of course, again by Studio Canal. The box set for that sold out the week it came out. So there's a new market, I think, for the collectors, Greg. People like you, me, and the people who listen and watch this vodcast or podcast. That's the audience. And I think once the content is genuinely new, and it's not just a repackage of old things that people have seen before, if it's new, valuable content and it's a better picture, an upgrade in the picture and sound, then I think it's fair to say, look, we're going to go again back to the shops and we open your wallets. We're coming for your money.
Well, I wonder how much a box set like that would cost. I got the Friday the 13th box set, and that was pretty big, you
Yeah.
know.
But I think it's all about value, isn't it? If it's going to cost, we don't have a price yet for it, but I mean, a 4K single release of Clash of the Titans would be quite expensive. I'm expecting it to be about £30, which might be about $45. Um, so it's the cost of the restoration, and it's a limited market in terms of people who will buy that 4K disc. But of course, then it'll have a longer shelf life as what's called a library title for the studio. So when it then eventually goes on to Netflix or Prime Video, it'll be a 4K release. And I know some consumers, they will look for 4K releases because they want to see what looks great on their new 4K tellies. So they'll be looking for new and old films in 4K. So now that's the big incentive is to get things all brushed up into 4K for people who want to see them. So exciting times.
I'd be interested in the box set, I gotta say. I like a number of Ray's films, Clash of the Titans being my favorite. Golden Voyage of Sinbad, though, is a very close second. Are you still in touch with Caroline Munro?
Yes, Caroline, who's a former trustee of the foundation, we're still in touch with. She gets involved with different exhibitions we have. The one we have in Scotland at the moment called Titan of Cinema. She, along with other filmmakers and myself, contributed to interviews for that. So sort of explaining the legacy of Ray Harryhausen and giving the sort of the performers' point of view as well. And she's a great lady. She's a great ambassador, and we're all big fans of hers here at the foundation. And of course, she's a Bond girl as well. She's a
Yeah.
Hammer girl as well, and she's a
Yeah.
Harryhausen girl. And she said it's quite all right for us to refer to her as girl because that's how she refers to herself at conventions. But there are very few women who fall into all three categories. So Harryhausen, James Bond, and Hammer films. So it's quite a select group of people that.
I had her on my show back in 2016, and I'm going to try to get her on again. Maybe this year. I don't know. But I'd love to have her back. She was a wonderful guest, and loved talking to her about that film. Yeah, the Hammer films. I actually got Veronica Carlson on here because of Caroline, because when her representative noticed that I had interviewed Caroline, he had said, "Oh, Veronica's going to love that you interviewed Caroline." Veronica, come on. And yeah, I spoke very highly of Caroline Munro. Yeah, there's I find the women that are in these movies very mystifying, because you look at Clash of the Titans, look at the women in that. And I'm not just talking Judy Bowker, but look at the ones who played the goddesses. You got Maggie Smith, Ursula Andress, need I say more? Absolutely gorgeous, Um, I'm trying
Claire
to think.
Bloom.
Claire Bloom, the one that had the
Yeah.
crown. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. And I loved all that. Susan Fleetwood, of course, who had Boo Boo the Owl. I loved all of that. The movie is great to look at. I love the music, and it opened the same day as Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it held its own. Raiders, of course, was the highest grossing film of the year, but Clash of the Titans held its own quite well, which is quite remarkable.
It is, and it's at a time when Star Wars had already been out. I think it'd been
Hmm.
reissued as well. So people were more familiar with computer aided special effects. Although none of those computers on screen were created by computer, the movements of the models and the movements of the cameras, the opportunity to repeat exact movements meant that they could overlay several images on top of each other, making a more convincing fly through space and alien dogfights and so on. So I think the pressure was on for big special effects films to deliver as much as previous films did. But it did, you're right. It found a strong audience. It made more money in Europe than Raiders of the Lost
Yeah,
Ark
I
did.
know. I heard. Yep.
Yeah, so it's all the more mystifying then why they didn't get another film going straight away, right on the heels of it. Because when Golden Voyage of Sinbad came out in 72, 73,
Hmm.
it was so successful that weekend, the head of Columbia Pictures rang them up and said, look, this is fantastic. Revisiting Sinbad from 1958 was a great idea. would you like to do another one? And they were like, yeah, great, because normally they're doing the pitching. They're not being offered films. They're doing the pitching always. So Ray and his producing partner, Charles Schneer, were like, great, let's get another Sinbad up and running. 1977's Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger was the result. So, it's Ray's films were always successful in terms of their dramatic presentation and the special effects, but not always successful at the box office. This one was an absolute runaway success. I mean, a gold standard success. Some of the critics were a bit snotty about it in some of the reviews, but that's only to be expected. When we look back at reviews for many films, whether it's sort of Star Wars, Raiders, E.T., Jaws, a lot of our favorite films have snotty reviews from reviewers. A lot of those film reviewers are dead and gone, but the films are still here and have been reassessed. So really, you'd imagine a studio head would have been straight on the phone saying, I want another Clash of the Titans part 2, and they had one ready, or they were developing one, Force of the Trojans. So it's somewhat of a mystery why it didn't happen, but having kind of delved into it for Harryhausen the Lost Movies, it's no longer a mystery, and it's quite a shame. It's a shame that it didn't happen. And if you get the book and read it, it goes into the full chapter and verse of what happened next, who was involved. There's artwork, there's models, and there was nearly test footage as well. And Phil Tippett and Dennis Muren from Industrial Light and Magic were involved. So it would have been a big step up, Greg, from the effects from Clash of the Titans. And it's a real shame we were denied that, because that would have been 1984. So the same year as Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, which I love. I love Star Trek 3. And was Ghostbusters 1984? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that would have been, and I think Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, so that would have been some summer. Those films plus Force of the Trojans. Wow, that would have been something.
Wow, I wish that had got made. This I got to see at an outside screening back a few years ago, and it got an A+ from me. I still consider this a great film. I love it. I've heard people say it's got pacing issues, but I don't see it, because I'm always looking forward to what's coming next, and there's always something. A lot of people point to the Medusa scene, but look at the other creatures in this. Medusa, the Kraken. You had the giant scorpions, the two-headed dog, the giant vulture.
And Pegasus. Beautiful Pegasus.
Boo Boo.
Bubo, I must say, it's Bubo the owl.
Bubo? That's what they called it.
Bubo.
Yeah, so this gets an A+ from me. So I love this film. So in the Trojan movie, are you able to share of any creature ideas that were supposed to be in that?
Yeah, there was going to be a talking sphinx. There was going to be a sea creature called Charybdis. There was going to be types of harpies that come from hell. So it was going to have much more of a darker element to it. I mean, there was a scene that was planned for Jason and the Argonauts, where when Jason is attacked by the seven-headed Hydra, he's chased into the entrance to hell because the Hydra is protecting the entrance to Hades, hell. And then in hell, he disturbs the graves of dead soldiers, and that's where the skeletons come from. But the British Board of Film Classification, who read scripts before you shoot your picture, can actually advise on what certification they would give a film. And they said if you went that route, we'd have to give it a higher certification, denying tickets then to younger members of the audience. So they decided to cancel that, and they would have the sequence with the skeletons in daytime, in a more of a twilight kind of situation, not at nighttime, and certainly not in hell. So we have artwork for that in Harryhausen the Lost Movies. You can see what was intended. So some of those ideas were brought back for Force of the Trojan. Going to hell now wasn't going to be such a big problem. When you look at the success of Conan the Barbarian, which in Europe had what's called an X certificate, which would be, I think, like an 18 where you are perhaps, and that was very successful. So Ray knew now that he could make something much more adult and with a much harder edge to it. And they were revisiting those areas that they couldn't before. So there was a big sequence in hell The thing with the script, though, is it's quite complex. It has way too many human characters, Force of the Trojans. So I think one of the reasons the studio said no was because it wasn't as straightforward a story as this, which is boy meets girl, boy meets monster, defeats monster to win girl. That's kind of the gist of it. Whereas Force of the Trojans is a bit more of a kerfuffle. And it's the story of how Rome was founded after the destruction of Troy. And so it's involves Daedalus and Icarus, and it's quite something. I went through it about a year and a half ago under a new development deal we have to remake Force of the Trojans. We set up a new company called Harryhausen Films Limited, and we set that up in collaboration with Morningside Films, which is Charles Schneer's former company. Mm-hmm. And although Charles Schneer isn't here anymore, neither is Ray Harryhausen, these companies exist to collect residuals. So when films are repeated and they're entitled to residual payments, these companies exist to make sure that money goes to the families. And anyway, I had a crack at the script, and I've stripped out as many of the human characters as I possibly could. And a bit like Lex Luthor in Superman, I was kind of saying that, people are a liability. So I went through all the human characters, tried to kind of concentrate the main storylines into the center, a quarantine of them, and kept all the creatures and all of those monster sequences. And now it works much more fluidly. And I think I've added some scenes as well that they should have done in the first place, and to kind of top and tail it better. And I've added some creature sequences as well, in for a penny, in for a pound. So now this is a real possibility, and we've had some interest.
You guys are going to make this?
Well, that's the intention, So
wow.
The remake of Force of the Trojans is more likely today than it was at any time since the film wasn't greenlit back in 1984. So we're kind of hopeful, and we've had a lot of positive signals. Between the Lost Movies book and the other books I've done, it's put me in touch with different film studios and streaming services who are quite keen, because it's all about content, Greg. People watch Netflix and Prime Video and Disney Plus and Apple TV and so on, not because they like those brands. I mean, they're all good brands, but it's because they got good content, and Disney Plus really did it with The Mandalorian. A lot of people who didn't want to see maybe children's films did get Disney Plus because they wanted to see The Mandalorian. And now they've got all of the 20th Century Fox library there as well, which was a really smart move. They've got an amazing subscription base, and so have Netflix and Prime Video and so on. So it's all about the content. Content is king. If you have the right content, people will come to your channel, regardless of the name of the channel. It really doesn't matter. People will find the right content that's right for them. And so everyone's always looking for the next thing, what's going to be the next Harry Potter? And in the case of Amazon, they're thinking, what's going to be the next Lord of the Rings? Well, it's going to be Lord of the Rings, because they're actually remaking Lord of the Rings, which I'm going to say is probably too soon. They've already started shooting it. And it's going to be starting to stream, I think, from next January. Exciting if you like Lord of the Rings. The Pete Jackson stuff is fine. There's the Ralph Bakshi animated film from 1978, which I'm a big fan of. I love that movie.
I've had Bakshi on here twice.
Oh, such a great man. Such a great man. And in many ways, not recognized in his own professional lifetime. When he was a filmmaker making his wonderful animated films, particularly Lord of the Rings, I felt that he didn't get the recognition he deserved. And people who expect it to be like a Disney cartoon are very surprised when they watch it, because it's nothing like that at all. He was a real genius at work.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, I don't know if you know, there's a Ralph Bakshi connection with Escape from New York. Barry Jackson, who created this amazing poster, you can see of Statue of Liberty's head. He was a background artist on Lord of the Rings, working with Ralph Bakshi. So, small world.
I had Bakshi on in 2017, and we celebrated the anniversary of Fritz the Cat. And then the following year he came back, and I had him on to celebrate the anniversary of Heavy Traffic. I had an interesting story about that, because initially when he agreed to come on my show, he was trying to get a project going. Excuse me. But it fell through, as some of these funding online things do. And Anyway, he canceled on me, and I understood his grievances, um, but I held off. And in the following year, I thought, in the back of my mind, Fritz the Cat will celebrate its, at the time, 45th anniversary. Next year it'll be 50. Came out the same year I was born, actually. And so I pitched it to him, and he agreed to come on. Um, I think he was I think he was reluctant, but he came on. But by the end of the interview, and this is one of the biggest compliments I ever got, he said that he's been interviewed by a lot of people, but he said this is one of the best interviews he ever had. He said, I asked the right questions, good questions and the right questions. And I could tell listening to that when we discussed Fritz the Cat, there was some details I brought up that he was quite happy I brought up. So I'm very proud of that, you know?
I'm hoping that his film Lord of the Rings, which is on, I think, Warner Brothers Blu-ray, it's quite hard to get now, but it needs a full restoration and it needs a commentary track. You know, I don't think Ralph Bakshi has recorded many commentary tracks for his films, and certainly Lord of the Rings is where I would start. And you know, I think it's deserving of a full restoration and a full set of extras as well. I think it's a great movie.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you know, I hope that if you do make the Trojan movie into a film, you should put you should dedicate it to Ray Harryhausen.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Oh
it would
yeah.
be absolutely. Look, Ray's name's going to be all over the credits because he produced the original script. He was story artist, a storyliner for the original script, so he gets story credit. He created the creatures, so we'll be using the same creature design. So it will definitely be Ray Harryhausen presents. You know, anything that we do at the foundation is always Ray's name is always above everything. So whether it's exhibitions, whether it's books, I mean, look, you can see how big his name is on that book. Where is it there? Look, you know, when he did movies, his name was never this big on the posters. It never said Ray Harryhausen above the title in the way that John Carpenter's name is above, you know, says John Carpenter's The Thing. Or even when it was Stephen King's Christine, it said John Carpenter's Christine, you know. So no, we'll absolutely, Greg. We'll make sure that it's Ray Harryhausen sort of front and center.
So this book, can you get that from you or is it on Amazon?
Oh, all good bookshops have it. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your books. There used to be signed copies available at tysonbooks.com. You'd have to check on their website if they have any left. I signed quite a few of those and they sold out. And I signed some more. So they may have some at tysonbooks.com. And it's about $35, 35 US dollars or $30. Go onto Amazon and check, but you'll find it there. And it's great value because it's a big book. It's full color. It's about 200 pages. And compared to a lot of books out there, this one it's good value. You know, people want good value. They don't want to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds for a book. And it's not as big as that, but it's not far. So it's about this big, about this big.
Okay. I'd love to get a signed copy.
Well, get yourself to tysonbooks.com. You can get some signed copies there. And I think they've got some signed copies of my other books, Flash Gordon, and they'll have copies of Escape from New York as well. So it's the market for books has grown. You know, in lockdown, people are reading more.
I still read. Like, I don't do it on my tablet. I'm a physical media guy. You know, people say physical media is going away, but I don't know. I like to have my physical media.
I think some physical media, like newspapers, if it's a bit disposable, we might think we don't need that. But when it's a book, you don't want to send someone a token for a Kindle version of a book like this. You want to be able to see it and smell the pages and just linger over those photographs. And I think those kind of books are in the ascendance, and as are the collector's box sets. So physical media in some ways is changing. So people aren't buying lots of DVDs every week when they do their shopping, but they are now buying a special one-off box sets, which might be the price of several DVDs, and it's one film in different forms with the soundtrack and with box sets, with a booklet. I bought Flight of the Navigator, and that was a 4K restoration, and it had a booklet inside, and it was that was great. I would pay more to see it in 4K, and to read a small booklet of things that I mostly knew. But it's rare that I buy one of these things and find lots of new information. But if it's a restored film and 4K, I mean, I must have bought Superman the movie, I don't know, a dozen times. I bought the 4K version when it came out there. There was a TV version that was 3 hours long on Blu-ray. I had the box set on Blu-ray from before. It's the same with Star Wars and Star Trek. I'm waiting for the Star Trek movies, the original cinema movies, to have 4K restorations. And they really Paramount missed a trick. They should have done it for Star Trek the Motion Picture in 2019, which hit its 40th anniversary. And I was really disappointed there wasn't a 4K restoration of Star Trek the Motion Picture. It deserved it. It was shot on 70 millimeter. So it really deserved the 4K, and I'm still hopeful they'll do that. But the market for that is there. I don't know particularly how strong it is, but
well, they definitely do it for Wrath of Khan, I'm pretty sure. I think that was the most successful, or at least the most celebrated.
Absolutely. I think all those original films with the original cast, they should maybe box set them in 4K. I think people would buy them again, but they know better. I mean, it may be that they wouldn't, but I think it's a shame because they are great movies. And even the ones that are less loved, like Star Trek 3 or Star Trek 5. So number 3, The Search for Spock, and number 5, The Final Frontier. I know people kind of hum and ha about those films, but I love those movies. I think they're great.
Well, I've got 3 different versions of American Werewolf in London here, so like if I like a film enough, I'll get like, I would get another version of this, especially with extra material on it. I'm all for it.
Well, this is the problem. Studios are running around now looking for extra pieces. Mm-hmm. And before the 1980s, it was very rare for studios to hold on to trims or any outtakes. And they call them different things, but when it's not locked into the final print, everything that's left is called a trim or an outtake. And they're often literally thrown away. They're put into a bin or they're recycled because they can use the plastic again. So the footage that's shot on location, or the rushes and the dailies, will often be, if you're shooting like a 10-to-1 ratio, it means for every 1 hour you're filming or that you use, 10 hours are extraneous footage or alternate takes. Most studios don't hold on to those. So they hold on to the original version of the film that was shot, the original camera negative. The rest is thrown away. Now, of course, studios will hold on to things. So for films like American Werewolf and other Harryhausen films, there are scenes that have been cut that we are still looking for to find out if they're in any of the archives and so on. But John Landis, who shot American Werewolf in London, he was in London making American Werewolf in London when he met Ray Harryhausen down at Pinewood when he was filming Clash of the Titans. And John said to me that he said, I went into this kind of small little studio space and Ray was in there trying to fly Pegasus on these really narrow wires. And of course, the Pegasus model is very, very heavy. It has a lot of complicated stuff in it. There you go. They're the two.
Got two of them. I've got a steelbook of it here too.
And that's had a 4K restoration as well. I don't think they've put it on a UHD 4K disc yet, but it's had a 4K restoration. So,
yeah.
John Landis appreciates all those sort of creature features. He's a big fan of creature features. He's made some himself. So, I mean, it's there is a big market for it. It's he contributed to Lost Movies as well. He told me about films he tried to get made that weren't made. In 1983, he was with, I think it was Universal Pictures, and he'd pitched a version of The Creature from the Black Lagoon to be remade, and to do it in 3D because everything was being done in 3D in the early 80s. And the studio kind of decided, no, they're going to go for something else in 3D. It was Jaws 3D. Because they felt that, I can understand why they felt that, because Jaws is a recognizable franchise that could be exciting for audiences in 3D. Of course, the final film is embarrassingly bad.
Yep.
And it's a real shame for everyone involved because there's nothing really you could say. Even the music in that film doesn't work. I would love to have seen John Landis do A Creature from the Black Lagoon in 3D. How could that not have been better? Of course, it would have been brilliant because John's a brilliant filmmaker. So he shared that story with me for the first time for this book. So it's quite surprising how many filmmakers have these stories. Instead of having one person write the foreword for this book, I got hold of several filmmakers. So John Landis wrote a piece for the forward. So did Guillermo del Toro, John Borman, the director of Excalibur, Mike Hodges, the director of Flash Gordon, and Nicholas Meyer, director of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So
Oh,
they've all
wow.
contributed to what's called the Filmmakers Forward, where they discuss in particular their own unmade projects in relation to Harryhausen's. So to give it context, we wanted people to think it wasn't just Ray who had lots of films unrealized. Lots of filmmakers have. In fact, all filmmakers, whether it's Steven Spielberg or Stanley Kubrick or George Lucas, famous names who've tried to get things made and often don't get them made. And it's not because people don't want them or don't want their films. It's just it's maybe not the right time, or audiences are turning away from that sort of genre. All sorts of studio politics goes on. Who's available at the time? It's a real sort of chess game of getting the right people in the right place at the right time when the money's available. So it's I've had those problems too.
Spielberg, when he did Ready Player One, that was like a love letter to those, like any past movie, you know, like he's somebody that still has that mentality of that kind of excitement to me.
He is, yeah. I mean, he's a nostalgic person, so he
Mm-hmm.
brings that sort of nostalgic point of view, but he's a great storyteller as well. So he can do something which is shockingly relevant as a Second World War film like Schindler's List.
Mm-hmm.
And recently that had 2 or 3 years ago, had a 4K restoration. It is
Mm-hmm.
superb. I got the 4K restoration for that. To think in the same time he made that film, within that same 18 months, he'd made Jurassic Park as
Jurassic
well.
Park, yeah.
So, quite one of the most wonderful filmmakers Hollywood has ever produced. He would be perfect to work with in the Harryhausen world. And you mentioned Ready Player One. There's a
Yep.
sequence when lots of creatures are running. There's a Cyclops from Seven Voyages Sinbad in there, so you have to kind of pause it to see. But the Cyclops makes an appearance, which is fabulous.
Do you have? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite Ray Harryhausen creature effect?
I do actually, and it's not necessarily my favorite creature model, because one of my favorite creature models is the Kraken from Clash of the Titans. When I got to kind of do that for my documentary film, I got to kind of see the Kraken up close and work with the Kraken and talk to the Kraken and that sort of thing. But my favorite sequence, and I think it's the one that most, it still puts chills up my spine, and it's a small sequence. It's small but not insignificant, and I think it's the one that most reflects the master and creator relationship that Ray has with his creatures, with his models.
Mm-hmm.
When Prince Kura, using his own blood, brings back a homunculus on his table on a slab of marble in front of him, and it crawls back to life and it cries out as it's being reborn, and it steps onto his master's arm, and he asks him to fly off, and spy on Sinbad. It's just like, it works so well, and it's a very quiet sequence, and the animation is really subtle. So it's not lots of skeletons doing their thing, which is brilliant, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the subtle stuff has aged better than other sequences, and that still gives me the chills. And it most represents, as I say, the relationship between Ray and his creatures, because the homunculus, when you see him on the tabletop, is about the right scale for Ray when Ray was animating him. So one of my favorite scenes that always stands out. And who wouldn't want a homunculus? I'd want one. I'd want to find out what people are doing and whisper in my ear. I do have my contacts within the industry, so I do hear, but I'd like to hear and see a lot more.
I don't know. In that film, I probably would have said that if I was the creature, I probably would have stopped right at Caroline Munro, and I probably would not have been watching Sinbad.
Exactly. You get a naughty homunculus who just be sat there on the edge of the boat watching this beautiful slave girl, effectively, which is what she was. She was sold to Sinbad and his party. If you would take my lazy son and so many gold pieces, and because he wanted to teach his son a lesson, didn't he? About hard work.
Gee, his son, I gotta say, had one of my favorite lines in the film, where he says, "My heart is full of bravery. I just have very cowardly legs."
Yeah, Kurt Christian is great in that. And I think a lot of people don't realize, because he was a very good actor and he still is a good actor, is that he turns up in the next Sinbad film, which is unusual because Ray often didn't use the same actors twice. He plays the witch Zenobia. That's his son, her son. So the son of the witch Zenobia is Kurt Christian, where he plays this rather entitled, spoiled man who's waiting to become the next prince. So once they can do away with the Prince Khalif, who's been turned into a baboon, then her son can ascend the throne. So she's a really pushy mum.
Her son, the one that goes down the stairs.
That's right. Yes, Sinbad
I
the Eye
know
of the
who
Tiger.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he plays the yeah, he's in that. So he plays her mum.
Yeah, that's
she plays
different.
his mum. Yeah. So.
Wow. So Clash of the Titans, when it gets that re-release, is it going to have some added scenes, like sometimes some of these, like the Blues Brothers and Stripes did this, or they had extended versions where stuff was found and put back into the film, and those are always fascinating. Is Clash of the Titans going to have anything like that?
Well, we have footage that's been found from the special effects. What we haven't found yet are any full scenes. And the problem with, if we had found full sequences with actors talking, we wouldn't necessarily have the dialogue, because on a film, dialogue was recorded separately on magnetic tape. When the film goes through the camera, no sound is being attached to the film at that point. So sound is always separate. So one of the big problems when you find a deleted film scene is, where is the sound take? And so I'm reminded of Spartacus, when there was a scene with Laurence Olivier, was it? And who was in that tub full of milk? Was it Tony Curtis? I think it might have been. Anyway, they got Laurence Olivier wasn't available to do his voice because he'd since passed away. But they got Anthony Hopkins, who was a very good mimic of Sir Laurence Olivier, and he created the sound for that. And I think Tony Curtis had created new dialogue for that sequence as well. So finding the scene is one thing, finding the sound outtake is something else. But at the moment, we don't know of any scenes that have been cut from the film, but we do have special effects test footage that hasn't been seen that we will include as part of any 4K re-release.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Well, you know what? I think it's wonderful that we got the I'm happy to have you on here today celebrating the 40th anniversary of this. So unfortunately, we've got pandemic. How bad's the pandemic where you are? We're in what you call the yellow phase here. And the yellow phase next is the green phase, which means you're home free. We've been affected by it, but here in New Brunswick, Canada, we got the jump on it. So like I've worked all through it. And like I said, I've been going back to the movies since last July. A lot of places can't even do that. What's it like where you are right now?
Well, I'm in London, and in the center of London, and
Mm-hmm.
we were hit quite badly because we're quite a populous nation. And although we did lock down and we did various things, it caught lots of people by surprise. But we're coming out of that now. So I think our Prime Minister today is about to announce another level of which we're unlocking to. We don't have levels in colours. I think we have them in numbers. I'm not sure which one we're at. But we've been told we can hug people from today, Greg. So I
Oh,
think
great.
that's
I'm
quite
looking forward to
promising.
that.
Mm. So
Well,
whether
like,
you want one or not, people in London are going to be having to hug each other because they've been told to. We've got to hug. So that's good. So I hope within this time next month I'll be able to go back to the gym and back to the theatres and restaurants and so on, and basically get back to some sort of normal life.
so are you gonna go to the gym so you can look like Perseus?
I tell you, I don't have a. I'm too old to try and even attempt to get a body like that. But I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best. If I could swap with Perseus there, I would. But I think I may have left it too late. But I'm gonna try. We can but try.
Well, if you can't get Perseus physique, you can always try to get an Andromeda female
Well, I don't know. We'll
or a
have to.
Caroline.
Caroline, she's a fine-looking lady. Fine-looking lady today. But it's interesting. But he's hardly got any clothes on there in the shots. So it's you get a chill. He'll get a chill if he keeps his sword out that much longer.
Do you hear from any of the remaining cast from Clash of the Titans anymore?
Not really, no. I mean, for the actors who took part in this job 40 years ago, for them it was just a job and they moved on. Um, and I do wonder how many actors want to be remembered for this film and not others, because this film is not necessarily an actor's film. It's much more of a sort of a special effects or a genre piece. And as people go into their retirement years, they're sometimes frustrated that they're not remembered for better performances that haven't been as widely seen. But I mean, that's life. We think about a lot of the great actors out there. Gregory Peck is probably most remembered by most people for The Omen, and he's brilliant in The Omen. Of course, he's fabulous in The Omen, but people don't remember him for other films, To Kill a Mockingbird, perhaps, and other things that he's done. So these things come. There's a sort of an ebb and flow with these things. But I think if we were in touch with any of these actors, I'm sure they'd have good things to say about Ray Harryhausen.
Well, it's interesting because Maggie Smith went on to be in all the Harry Potter movies, and I'm wondering if that went through. I wonder if she reflected on Clash of the Titans when she got cast in that, because there's a lot of similarities.
There are, and I think to be in a film where the creatures are the main focus. I mean, you can see with the poster behind me, you have one creature, then another creature, and then the two main cast down here at the bottom. So it's I'm sure in Maggie Smith's case, she felt probably confident appearing in a film with lots of creatures because she'd done it before and she knew what to expect. But the film wasn't riding on her shoulders, in either case. So I think she was just professional enough to see it as a job and a good film to be involved with, and then moved on. So, actors, when you look on a Wikipedia page for an actor, I had to do this for my research for Escape from New York. Ernest Borgnine, Lee Van Cleef, and Donald Pleasance had all worked on over 100 films, well over 100 films. And yet Ray Harryhausen did well by making 16. So it's a completely different level of attitude to work. If you're an actor, you can work on 10 or 20 pictures a year. When you're a filmmaker, you're often spending years setting up one film. So it's the difference between the fast lane and the slow lane. And often actors don't have as good recall because it was just a job, a job that they did maybe 30, 40 years ago. And in that year, they worked on maybe a dozen other projects. So it is hard. It's hard to remember. You think how many times you go to the supermarket, Greg, and if someone said, what were you buying this week 40 years ago? You'd be thinking, well, I don't know. It's for some actors, it's like that.
Well, I got to admit, it was well cast. I mean, Laurence Olivier, who better to play Zeus, he looked the part, Maggie Smith, Ursula Andress, Claire Bloom. You had some really, they cast well in that Olympus sequence, they casted really well. So yeah, no, I need to get hold of that book. And after your escape from New York, what's your next one after that?
Well, we haven't agreed on the next book yet, but I've been so busy in this sort of lockdown period with books and doing videos, and I've done sort of virtual signings for people. I've done lots of talks here on Zoom about different books and about old films. I have an old film that's just gone on to Prime Video, that's 10 years old tomorrow. It's called Tory Boy the movie, where I stood for election. That's the film there. And
Okay.
it's a documentary feature film about politics in England. So it sounds quite dry, but actually it's quite funny in places, and it's more of a kind of a domestic kind of who's who of trying to find a missing MP who should be doing a job that he's not doing. And 10 years ago tomorrow, that premiered in cinemas. And so now that's on Prime. And so I'm trying to get some of my other TV shows on Prime Video. And so I'm talking to different channels about new stuff. There's a new book. I'm going to be doing a book again soon. But like with Escape from New York, I won't be allowed to talk about it until
That's all right.
Until near the time of publication, because for various reasons, I think they don't want a spoiler book coming out. This is the official book sanctioned by the people who own and worked on Escape from New York. Mm-hmm. But they don't want a fan version coming out, which is maybe unofficial and can steal the thunder of this. These books are very expensive to put together. So it's kind of important for the studios and the publishers to make sure that nobody gets a jump on them. Look, when Robin Hood came out years ago, 2 Robin Hoods came out at the same time. I'm surprised the Muppets didn't do a Robin Hood as well, just to make it 3. So, it's never helpful when you have 2 or 3 of the same.
Do you hear a lot about this movie in London where you are?
Oh yeah, Clockwork Orange. Well, part of that was shot not far from where I live. So
I love
the
that
scenes
movie.
around the housing estate, which were new at the time, in a place called Thamesmead.
Mhm.
I know Thamesmead, and so big fan of Stanley Kubrick, big fan of Clockwork Orange. Great stuff, great t-shirts.
I got a couple Kubrick or Clockwork Orange t-shirt, but I had the guy who played the lodger on my show
Oh wow,
back in 2018. Yeah. No, I love doing the interviews when I can get the time zone straightened out. So I'm now set. You guys are 4 ahead of me. LA is 4 behind me, so I'm just stuck here in the middle. I get it. We're in that little part of Canada that not too many people are aware of.
cool. Well, look, next
Yeah.
time when the 4K comes out, maybe I'll come back and say hello again. And if we have any other new anniversaries coming up, I'd always be happy to come back and say hi, Greg.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have you on. Here's my Kraken.
Ooh,
Are you my Kraken?
what's his name?
Skittles.
I'm not sure Skittles would be a Titan name. Release the Skittles.
Release the Skittles.
Sounds fun. It could be a pal for Bubo the owl, perhaps. Skittles the cat.
Yeah, he's my mystical beast. He just come by here to rub against my leg. Let me know he's here. You know what? I appreciate you coming on here. Yeah, I would love to have you come back on next year. And keep updated and maybe then you'll probably have your next 2 books out, and that'll give us a whole new chunk of stuff. Plus, maybe we'll have the new version of this out. That'd give us lots to talk about.
It would indeed, absolutely. I could tell you about the extras
Mm-hmm.
and what we found in the archive. So fingers crossed this time next year it will be Clash of the Titans interview part 2.
Well, actually, it's going to be probably part 4. That'll be your 4th time on, but
4th Harryhausen, 2nd Clash, yes.
yeah, 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 second Clash, yeah, because I think we celebrated Golden Voyage as well. So, you guys go do anything new with Golden Voyage?
No plans at the moment. Just so far Clash of the Titans, but you never know. You never know.
Okay. Well, before I let you go, do you have any charities that you want to plug on here?
Well, the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation is actually a charity. So my work for them as a trustee, I don't get paid for it, and I don't look for payment for it. But I try and promote what they do. So if people want to have a look online, you can find us, the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, at rayharryhausen.com. You can find our social media links to Twitter and Facebook. You'll recognize us. We have the blue ticks, so you know which ones are the legit ones. We have a podcast series, the Ray Harryhausen podcast. We have a vodcast series, which is in episode 3 now, the Harryhausen vodcast, where you can find all of those links on the website. And if you want to know more about me, you can Google John Walsh, filmmaker, and you'll find my websites, my Twitter, Instagram, everything else.
You guys have a podcast. I listen to podcasts while I'm at work. Like if I'm working like 7 or 8 hours doing a shift, I listen to podcasts.
You should download ours. We've been going for about 3 or 4 years now. We've won various awards. And
I'm going to
you can
have
get
to
them on
do
all the
that.
usual places: Spotify, Apple iTunes, SoundCloud. There isn't anywhere we haven't been.
Is it on YouTube?
It's on YouTube as well, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to have to do that. That gives me something else to listen to. Yes, I'd love that.
Good stuff.
Well, is there anything else you want to plug on here before we close off?
No, I think I mentioned all my books. My brand new book, which is Escape from New York, the official story of the film, out on the 28th of September. Great new stuff in there.
And Escape from New York is celebrating its 40th this year too, so perfect.
That's right. That's why the book's come out. So it's, to coincide with this year's 40th anniversary. So there's lots in there about the special effects. There's new interviews, there's new artwork, there's unseen stuff galore.
Absolutely. Especially that opening that they didn't keep in.
Yes, the bank robbery. Yes,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
insights into that, scenes that haven't been seen before. We have high resolution, high definition images throughout the book, so it's all been given a kind of a 4K restoration in terms of paper and pages.
Did you guys get to talk to Harry Dean Stanton before he passed away? Because he passed away not too long ago.
He was long gone, unfortunately, so we didn't get to speak to him. But everyone else is in the book, and we've got some great interviews in there with cast and crew. So should be an interesting read. A good one for Christmas.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, before I let you go, I would love a plug for my show on here.
Absolutely. What would you like me to say?
Just state your name and what you represent, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
So Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise, right?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm John Walsh. I'm a trustee, filmmaker, and author, and I work with the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation. And you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Absolutely. Out in New Brunswick, Canada, here we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of Clash of the Titans. This has been a favorite of mine. I would have been 9 years old when this came out in the theaters, and I've been lucky enough to see it screened since then. And I'm very, very happy that this movie got made. I love this movie. So many memories and so much to love about it. One of my all-time favorite movies, Clash of the Titans. We love Ray Harryhausen, and we wish you the very, very best in the future. Keep doing what you're doing, John, and I know we're connected on Facebook. I always see what you're doing when you post.
Thanks very much, Greg, and I hope to speak to you again very soon.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch. God bless you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.
Take care.
Take care.
Great. Okay, Greg. Have you got what you need then? Yes.
Absolutely. Got everything I need. We'll be back next year. We'll do this again.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You take
Great.
care.
Cheers, Greg. See you soon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.